Welcome to the Lee Schools TV podcast. I'm Adam Wright. Our guest today is Jamie Ayres, a pre-IB and honors English teacher at Cape Coral High School. Jamie, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Sure, and you're more than just an English teacher. You're also a published author. You've written several young adult novels, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, but I wanted to have you on because you also started the Cape Literacy Festival, or Cape Lit Fest for short, at Cape Coral High School, and the fourth annual Lit Fest is coming up on April 17th at Cape High. So can you tell me a little bit about what the Cape Lit Fest is and how it got started?
Sure. It actually got started because when I became a published author in 2013, I was invited to an author day at Veterans Park Academy, and I visited with sixth graders that day, and it was like the best day of my life. I had so much fun with them, but I didn't know if it was mutual. And then about a month after the festival, I got all these letters from these students, and they were just like, "Your books changed my life. I never liked reading before until I met you, and you seem so cool, so I read your books, and now I'm reading all these other books, and can you recommend other books, and now I'm starting a book club." I mean, it just went on and on. And I was blown away, and I saw how powerful it is when students make a connection, a personal connection with someone that they met who just happened to write a book. And so it just sparked this interest in actually reading my books because they thought like I was okay. And so the next year, I actually went to work at Gulf Middle. I had been an elementary school teacher previously at Calusa. And I started organizing author visits just based on my experience with that. So I did that the first year. And then the second year, Riverdale High School actually put on a literacy festival, and they invited me to participate as an author. And so I went to their day, and theirs was so much bigger than I had ever imagined for our author visit day. At the middle school level, they had author panels, they had classroom visits still. They did an entire outdoor festival at the end of the day. And they kept telling the authors, the students are so excited to meet you and get the book signed. And I just honestly really didn't believe them because it was a Friday afternoon. And I'm like, what kid wants to come out the last hour of school in the heat and wait in line, like, to meet an author and get a book signed? Like, I'm like, those kids are going to be out. But truly, the whole time, I had this huge line of kids waiting to talk to me. They were truly so excited, and they made the festival just so much fun that I really saw how it pumped up the students to get excited about reading. So I was like, this is amazing. So it was hard to have the same resources they did at a middle school level. I didn't have quite the community support. I don't know why to promote it for middle school. But once I moved to Cape High in 2016, I asked the principal, Dr. Spire at the time, if I could do a festival with it, and he said absolutely. And so we made it, we kind of mimicked what Riverdale had done because they had since let go of the festival. And so I'm like, well, I'll just kind of continue that tradition, but at Cape. And so, yeah, this is our fourth year doing it. We've experimented and tried different things every year to try to see what works best. And yeah, it's just a one-day event that the students know about a few months ahead of time. And it targets our lower readers specifically with our grants. So I write grants. One is given from the Foundation for Lee County Public Schools. It's $5,000. We got another one from Kiwanis Club of Cape Coral. And so we purchased books to give away for free to our lower readers. And it's a book by one of the visiting authors. So hopefully it gets them pumped to read it because, like, I'm going to meet this author. And even if they're not excited yet, like after the event, after they meet the author and see how cool they are and form this personal connection with them, then they're motivated to read. Obviously, you know, helping their vocabulary, instilling in them, hopefully, a love of reading again, which just often falls to the wayside in high school. You know, they have so many programs in elementary school that rewards them for all these reading goals, and that kind of goes away a little bit in middle school and then pretty much all together in high school. And so it's just trying to bring, maybe it's because I have an elementary school background, like trying to bring that excitement to the high school level.
So I went to it last year, and like you said, it's a one-day event. It's like an all-day event, right?
Right.
Most of the day, and you bring in a panel of published authors, and there's guest speakers, and then the students can do a meet and greet with the authors out on the football field afterwards, and get their books signed by them and ask them some questions.
Right.
And like you said, you give away books for free. And I think it's more than 500 books, right?
Right, over 600 books we gave away this year.
Wow.
Just kind of depends how much money we
Sure.
get in.
Yeah. So, like you said, you want students, so you kind of target those lower readers. Is it for every student at K-Pi, though? Can they go?
It is for every student. So we've experimented back and forth with, last year we did just keynote speakers and panels, but the feedback from the teachers was they liked the more personal, intimate setting with the authors in their rooms. So this year we're going back to author visits in the rooms. So every reading class and English class that day will get a visit from an author for about 20 minutes so they can meet them and ask them questions. And then even if you didn't have an English or reading class that day, out at the festival, which is the last hour of the day, anyone can go and meet the authors. And we try to encourage that through a scavenger hunt that has prizes associated with it, gift cards we have donated by community partners. And because this age can be socially awkward sometimes, like going up to a stranger and saying, like, I really loved your book, you know. So the scavenger hunt kind of gives them a purpose, like, if they didn't have the actual physical copy of the book for them to sign, because a lot of them have them on their Kindles and stuff, that they still have something to bring to the author and interact with.
And so who are these authors that come to the festival? Are they local authors, or are they from all over the place?
So they're from all over Florida. They're people that I met through different author events, since I'm an author myself. And I think the furthest one we have coming is from Tallahassee, Erica Cameron. Actually, Tashelle Combs used to live in Cape Coral, but she moved to Colorado, so she's coming the farthest away. But she kind of uses it as like a double thing, because she still wants to visit her family and just plans it around our festival time, so that's really nice.
And they're mainly, correct me if I'm wrong, but the young adult novel format authors?
Yeah, and we try to get all different genres. So like Erica Cameron's book this year is like a suspense. Tashelle Combs is fantasy about dragons. Lucienne Diver's book is a paranormal romance. There's another book, It's My Life by Stacey Ramey, that is about a girl with cerebral palsy. There's another one, Start Here, by Trish Doller, who lives in Fort Myers, and her book is about losing a friend and trying to move on. So yeah, we have all different various. Another one, Stephen Dos Santos, he is a dystopian, so we try to do all different genres.
And what is some feedback from students or teachers that you've gotten about the Lit Fest?
Just that it does make the students excited about reading again, that they come into class when they're doing stuff with the Literacy Festival book and they're excited about it. I've seen it from my point of view too. Last year I did book clubs with the Literacy Festival books. This year I just let them pick. They're not doing book clubs because it kind of limited it, because I needed a certain number of students like for each club, you know what I mean? And so they didn't have some of them had to take their second or third pick, so I wanted them just to have their first pick. So, because that's really the point, is when you come into school, you're reading out of your textbooks or just whatever the teacher wants you to read in English, you're not getting to pick what you want to read. And so here's a chance, like here's 8 different books, very different genres, all written for teens specifically, and you get to pick which one you think, would appeal to you the most. And so it's really fun for them, like just reading a book for fun again, like they used to all the time.
Yeah. So obviously it's all about a love of reading and books, but it's also a lot of it has to do with a love of writing as well. And I noticed when I was there, especially during the Q&A session with the author panel, that a lot of the students a lot of the questions they had were about writing, not necessarily reading. You know, since obviously they have authors at their disposal to pick their brains about the writing
Right.
process. How important is that for students who are maybe interested in writing books themselves one day to have that one-on-one interaction with professional published authors?
Right, for sure. Yeah, we have a lot of students who crave that creative outlet, and we don't have like a creative writing class anymore at Cape High or anything. And so, and we have Seahawks Eye where they can write for the newspaper,
Sure.
but nothing that's really fictional creative writing. And so this event for those kiddos is like really important to them because they have so many questions. So I know for me personally, I was a student at Gulf Middle School, and in 6th grade, 2 authors came to the school. I do not remember their names, but I remember I thought they were the coolest people on the planet, and I got to ask them questions after, and it made me want to write so much more. I already had an interest in reading and writing, but they're part of why I became an author, because I'm like, these 2 guys are so cool, and like they had their stuff published and got to go visit schools, and like that's the dream. And so for them just to see someone who's persevered, because they are very clear with them that
It's tough.
publishing industry is very hard to get into. So you really have to persevere. So it's also hopefully inspires them, no matter what they want to do with their life, just to follow your dreams. And if you work hard enough, you can accomplish what you want.
And to prepare themselves for failure at first, and like you said,
yeah.
to persevere over that.
Oh, right. Yeah, I always tell them I had over 60 rejections before
Wow.
someone offered me a contract for my trilogy. So most people aren't going to be like, instant overnight success. So it takes a lot of hard work.
Why is reading so important?
I think reading is so important because, especially in this day and age, the whole world is so information heavy. So you really have to be able to comprehend what you read and digest all that information and ask yourself, what does this say? What does this not say? And come to your own conclusions. And the moves that you see in fictional narrative writing, you see those in the argumentative and the informative articles too. And they need to spot all those persuasive techniques that authors are trying to pull on them, because there may be some fallacies there too, that they have to be aware of. And so I think it's, no matter what you read, it's like the more you read, it's true, the more you know, and you're going to be able to make a lot smarter, informed decisions.
Look at it with more of a critical eye. What is it about reading a great novel that can, transport you to a different world, or just a different mindset sometimes? What is it about that experience that is so rewarding?
I think that so a lot of my students tell me I have not read since elementary school. Like I fake read in class, whatever book, they look at Spark Notes. There's so much out there now. So I think for a lot of them, it's become like a catharsis for them, that escape. A lot of times people escape in unhealthy ways sometimes. And so reading is a really relaxing activity. And I have to train them at the beginning of the year because they always have to be reading a book for pleasure, like that's their only homework for me. And once they finish their bell ringer, they just have a few minutes to read before we move on. And so I train them to always have a book. They take it out. I have hundreds of books in my classroom, so they have plenty to choose from to check out. And it's amazing because they just get it out. You don't have to remind them. They're so engrossed in it. And as I'm trying to move on through my lesson, I feel terrible because I'm like, I need you to put your book away. I'm really happy you're reading though, but now we have to move on. And they get so engrossed in it. And just a couple weeks ago, I had 3 girls stop by my room. I didn't have them that day, but they're like, Mrs. Ayres, we were all just talking in the hall about we've never read this much in our lives, and it's all thanks to you, and we just thought we should come and tell you that.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I was like, thank you so much. That just made my whole year, because that's my goal, because we can teach them, all day long, but we have to instill that love of reading in them so that when they leave our classrooms, they still are going to read, and hopefully build that habit for life that
Yeah.
they're readers, because I really do feel like readers are leaders, and the best people I know are people who read all the time and are constantly thinking about what they read.
It's interesting because I won't say I was like the biggest, most prolific reader when I was in grade school. I did enjoy reading, probably maybe slightly above average in the number of books that I would read just for pleasure. But when I went off to college and then for a few years after college, I really wasn't reading a whole lot. And I found that, after several years went by, I just kind of had a longing. It was kind of one day I woke up and I was like, you know what I haven't done in a while? I haven't read a good book.
Yep.
And so I've started reading a lot more over the past few years, and it is a lot of fun. And I think
it is.
I think it's important to read, like you said, a lot, and a lot of different maybe genres, especially at the beginning when you're starting to figure out what you like.
Yes.
Because you might read a few books, and be like, Pride and Prejudice, it wasn't for me, or
No.
or whatever. I'm just using that as an example. But then you might find a mystery novel or something that you'd be like, oh, that is my jam.
Yep.
You know.
Yeah, whenever they come to me, I have them fill out a survey the first day of school. And on there, it's about, what is your favorite TV show? What is your favorite movie? Do you play video games? If so, what's your favorite video game? Because on the back of that is a whole reading survey. And most of the time it shows that they haven't read for many years. And they can't really tell me a favorite book, or if it was, again, from elementary school. So what I do is I look at, what do they like to watch TV? What's their favorite movie? What video game? And then I think of, okay, in that genre, what would they enjoy? And so the first time, if they don't already like reading, I pick a book out for them and like, try this one.
Cool.
And try to really show them that it's not that you don't like reading, you just haven't found the right book yet. Like,
Yeah.
there's a book out there for everyone.
It's got to be tougher these days for you as an English teacher to try to get kids into a love of reading because of the smartphones, right? I mean, I even find myself when I'm in my bed at night reading a book,
Right.
and I still got my phone on the bedside table next to me. I'll be in the middle of a chapter, and I'll still, for whatever reason, I'll put it down real quick because something popped into my head, and I'll grab my phone and I'll Google something or whatever. And so I'm sure that's a challenge as well, with just how addicted everybody these days is to their cell
Right.
phones.
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge, but honestly, once they get into the habit of reading every day, like, they truly do, the phone's away and they're into their book. And I would say 95% of them, there's always a few kids who fight it.
You almost have to train yourself.
Yeah, that's what I told them. Like, because at first I'll get, well, I can't concentrate for this long. My mind wanders. And I'm like, well, it's been a while since you've sat for an extended period of time and just read a book. So you have to train your mind, but your mind will catch on and get used to it. And it's funny because even sometimes when I'll see them on their phone or open up their Chromebook when they're reading, I'll go over and they're actually just Googling something from their book, like, where is this city, or, a word they didn't know. So I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, so I've tend to give them the benefit of the doubt now, because
Yeah.
they usually impress me.
Yeah, and half the time that I pick up my phone while I'm reading, it's to, double check something. Is that
Right.
true that I read in a book or something? And
Yep.
then, okay, let's talk about the novels that you've written. You wrote a trilogy, right?
Yes.
Called 18 Things.
18 things, yep, 18 truths and 18 thoughts.
And I read that it's a coming of age stories, a young adult romance with a paranormal twist. Is that right?
Yes.
So tell us, what are these books kind of about in a nutshell?
So in a nutshell, the first one's called 18 Things because the main character loses her best friend from kindergarten, who she also is secretly in love with. She never told him. And this freak accident, and so she's very obviously torn up about this. She swallows a whole bottle of pain pills, kind of not thinking, and so then her parents force her into counseling, and her counselor suggests she write this life list of 18 things to do that year that she's turning 18, with the rest of her friends, who refer to as the Jedi Order, because I'm a huge Star Wars nerd. And it's all about her trying to find the will to live again. And then at the end of that book, her therapist reveals this terrifying secret. And so that sets up the next book, 18 Truths, which is all about how we tend to lie to those we love because we think we're protecting them, but we're really not. And so the second book is really paranormal because in the second book, the main character actually goes into my own version of the underworld. There's like 4 planes to my underworld, and she's trying to find that best friend that she lost because she finds out some information. And then 18 Thoughts is back on Earth, and there's still a paranormal twist to that one. There's someone who can read her mind, and she has to figure out why, and it's all related to her trip to the underworld, and there's angels and demons that play. So definitely gets more paranormal as the series moves on because of what the main character discovers. But obviously by the end you have your happy ending. So people tend to be very angry with me at the end of book 1 and 2 because it leaves you hanging. I'm like, no, you have to read the whole thing.
Trilogy.
And then you'll be happy.
Sounds cool.
Hopefully.
How and when did you publish the first one?
I published it in 2013. I started writing in 2009 because the year prior, my cousin's son, who was 5 years old, was diagnosed with leukemia. And it just really tore me up. Like they live in Michigan, but we had just visited, and he was so full of life, little boys are. And I was like, how can he have leukemia? And I thought, what can I do to help from here? And in the mail, I got a flyer for Team in Training, which is an organization that trains people to run marathons, and in turn, you raise money for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Association for your marathon. And so I signed up to run the Sarasota Marathon. I raised over, I think around $2,500. So after I ran 26.2 miles, like you feel like I can do anything, because you never imagine that you could do that.
Yeah.
And so I made a bucket list for myself. Like, what else? I need to live life to the fullest, I have no excuse. I don't have cancer, I'm in perfect health. And so at the top of that list was write a book. And so I had been writing the book while I trained for the marathon, and then I just kept at it. And like I said, it took years. It wasn't until 2013 that I had my first book published.
You said you started writing it in 2006, is that what you said?
2009.
2009, okay. Yeah, I mean, I've heard, how grueling of a process writing a book can be from other authors. What was your process like? Did you lock yourself in a room for hours on end every single day until you banged out a bunch of pages, or what was your process like?
So at first, I was just writing at night. It is nice that you have kind of summers off as a teacher. I use that
Put
loosely.
that in quotes.
Yeah. I would say that I don't really have my summers off very much now that I teach high school. But back then, I had more time. And my daughters are finally at an age where they could keep themselves busy because they were 9 and 6. And so they were kind of just playing together. And so before I was like a cruise director every day, all day, every summer, with their activities. But I could take more time during the day too. And then I would stay up kind of almost all night, like typing in my room as well, get a few hours of sleep. And the words actually usually come to me very easily, the actual writing down of the story. I can usually finish the novel within that 2-month span of time in the summer. But of course, it's complete crap at that point. I always tell my students, it's like word vomit. You just kind of vomit the words on the page. Just get your thoughts down. That's the most important part, because then you can make it shiny later.
Yeah.
And so then you spend, the better part of a year trying to go through edits and revise and
Do you outline at all beforehand, or you just write and go?
I am not, which I know is terrible to say as an English teacher because we always have our students plan. But I don't really necessarily know where I'm going. I know it sounds weird, but the characters kind of speak to you in your head.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the only profession where it's acceptable to hear voices in your head. And so I just kind of get down what, is happening up in my head. And then after I finish that, then I actually do an outline. I have like a 3-page outline where I fill in the internal conflicts, the external conflicts, the character descriptions for all the main characters, so I don't forget, like, this person's eyes are blue and this person's hair is brown. And then I have 30 scenes where I fill in the setting and what's happening, what's the conflict, so that I make sure that my story is flowing correctly, where I don't have too much, slow time and the pacing is okay. So
You've published the 3. Do you have any plans for future books, or?
I'm not sure. I've written other books, but honestly, the publishing process is so grueling. So the thought of trying to get another contract, and then once you get the contract, you have to do so much self-promotion that that part is really hard for most authors.
It's tough when you already have a full-time job.
Exactly. And so now that I teach high school, I've taught every grade from 1st through 10th now, and I've always loved teaching, but truly when I get to high school, I was like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing with my life. So I guess I don't crave that outlet as much as I did before, as I get to be so creative with my high schoolers because they're, older, they're like mini adults, but I still journal and I still have those books that I wrote. So maybe one day I'll try, or just toss them up on Amazon and donate the funds to a charity or something. I don't know, because I don't really care about making the money part.
Sure.
For a lot of people, they're trying to publish a certain number of books so they can do that for the rest of their life. I really just wanted to prove it to myself and to my daughters that, like, if you work hard enough, then you can accomplish your goals. And so I did that.
Very cool. What, in your opinion, what makes a good story?
I think that the characters have to be relatable. So even with Harry Potter, it's my favorite book series, and it's this whole fantasy realm, it's so whimsical, and no matter how fantasized it is, there's still all these characters that we can relate to. And so I think that's just the most important thing.
I'd have to. I think any great book I've ever read or great movie that I've seen, it's the characters that stand out more than anything. And it could be a really cool and interesting plot, but if the characters are dull and you're not rooting for anybody in particular,
Right. And even if they're a terrible character, sometimes, like, look at how the Joker, the actor, he just won Best Supporting Actor at the
Joaquin
Oscars.
Phoenix,
He did amazing, so it doesn't have to be this, I just discussed this with my students because I was like, our protagonist flawless, and I had a lot of yeses. I'm like, no.
No, you want that flawed character.
Think of the Avengers. Like, even the Avengers, even Captain America, who seems so perfect, he is not perfect. He has flaws. You have to give them flaws so people can relate to them.
Yeah, his flaw is that he's too perfect, I think.
It is, because we talked about how he's stuck in his ways because he's from a former time, and so he's not willing to sacrifice anything, for the team or for the greater good. So he's kind of like, sometimes there's injustice in the world and not all laws are just, and you have to go against them.
Well, and, as human beings, we relate to other human beings, and nobody's perfect. We all have flaws. So when you read about a character or see them on the screen who's perfect, they're just uninteresting because they're not believable.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that kind of helps me segue into the final 5 questions. Are you ready to move on to that? Or is there anything else about LitFest or reading or books in general that you want to talk about?
I think you covered it pretty well.
But 4th annual Cape Lit Fest, April 17th. It's not open to the public, but
it's not. But that's something that I do hope is open to the public one day. I'm not sure how that would work, if we'd have to move it to after school or a weekend or something. But I think it would be fun to do something with the public. But yeah, we get the community involved because actually SAD Club joined us this year with making it more of like a whole community festival for the outdoor portion. So we're going to have firefighters with their fire truck. I think the Dare car or something. We're going to have the public library with information about their summer reading program and getting cards.
I think you had food trucks and stuff.
Yeah, we had Chick-fil-A come, Cerulli's Chili Treats. So yeah, there's food, there's games, there's door prizes with the scavenger hunt. So there's a lot of things going on. So I think it's something that the it would be really cool if we could keep it during the school day and bus some other students in from other Cape Coral schools,
yeah.
like to actually, that's why I had named it Cape Literacy Festival, because in case it got bigger than
Instead
the
of just
actual
like Cape Coral High School. Well, if anybody is listening to this who, might be interested in joining or participating next year,
Yeah, for
how
sure.
can they reach out to you?
Email would be the easiest way. So Jamie, Jamiema @leeschools.net.
Okay, cool. All right, Jamie. So I'm interested in this answer. It's probably, I'm guessing, maybe tough for you to narrow it down to one. So you can give me a few
Okay.
of your favorites if you want. But what's your favorite book?
Okay, so I don't know if I can pick one favorite Harry Potter book, but I love the whole series. I would say Prisoner of Azkaban and The Half-Blood Prince are really high.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Those are my two favorites.
Yeah,
Too. Yeah.
they're so good. It
Yeah.
like blew me away. I think that was the first time where I read a series and I just really thought about how far in advance that author had to plot out all these twists and keep everything consistent, and I was like blown away by that. As far as school-wide, I think my favorite book to teach is 1,000 Splendid Suns by Khalid Hosseini, which is set in Afghanistan. It has a dual point of view with two different girls from different generations who kind of get thrown together, and it follows the revolution there from the 70s to after 9/11, and it's just really well done, and it really opens the students' eyes to different culture and really how good they have it.
Cool. Okay. And, like you said, this relates to books as well because you mentioned that you have students, you ask them what their favorite video games or TV shows or movies are, and that can help you steer them maybe to a genre of books that they like. But so I'm interested, what is your favorite movie and or TV show?
So still sticking with Harry Potter for movie-wise. I
Really?
can watch those movies all day long. I
Ah.
watch them usually almost every weekend while I grade papers because it's something to throw on in the background where I don't get too distracted, but I still enjoy. TV show, I love Gilmore Girls because I love how quick-witted the dialogue is in Gilmore Girls, and it's so funny, and like, no matter how many times I watch it, it's still funny to me. But current TV show, I really like This Is Us.
God, I had a feeling you were going to say that. Well, you mentioned Star Wars earlier. What's your favorite Star Wars movie?
The Empire Strikes Back. Yeah.
Did you like any of the newer ones?
I did. Yeah,
Yeah.
I still love the newer ones. I know I'm not probably in the majority where I actually loved all three of the newer ones. A lot of people either liked 1 and 3 and hated the middle one, or loved the middle one.
I thought they got progressively. Well, I don't know if I even want to say that. I really liked Force Awakens, and I actually really liked Last Jedi. I had issues with it, but I hated Rise of Skywalker. So,
I don't know. Maybe I'm just like a big fangirl and like
Yeah.
they can do no wrong, but they can do wrong because I did not enjoy the prequels at all. Like,
I liked the lightsaber fights, and that's about it.
yeah, exactly. It was just, I felt like it was like a magician revealing his tricks to the audience. I'm
Well,
like,
yeah.
I don't need to know about metachlorian count, and like it explained too much to me. It lost some of its magic.
Too much CGI.
Yeah, that too.
Okay, what's your favorite song, or who is your favorite musical artist?
So favorite song, I'm gonna have to go with Iris by the Goo Goo Dolls, just because it was my wedding song 22 years ago, so that never gets old. Favorite band, though, would be Beatles. Like, I can always put them on and just relax. I like them.
What's your favorite Beatles song?
All You Need Is Love, because that's just like the theme of life.
I like Here Comes the Sun.
Yeah, that's a good one, too.
Okay. English, favorite subject in school
Yes,
growing up?
yep, obviously. I know, big plot twist there.
Did you always, from kindergarten on, it was your favorite? I don't know if you teach English in kindergarten, but
Yeah, I think it's
grammar,
reading and spelling.
Yeah.
So it was actually my second grade teacher at Pelican Elementary.
Oh, I went to Pelican.
Yeah, Mrs. Davis. I don't know if you had her. Shout out to Miss
I
Davis.
don't think so.
So I had moved schools a lot, kindergarten, first, second, and I came to Pelican March of my second grade year, and I was
You're from Michigan, right?
Mm-hmm, from
So
Michigan
you moved,
originally.
you moved here when you were young.
We moved here midway through my kindergarten year, and then lots of stuff happened. I just kept switching schools, and my whole world was kind of falling apart, and I just didn't really care about school. And I remember my mom pulling me aside and telling me, "You're going to fail second grade." and I was like jump roping on the porch, and I was like, okay, like I didn't care at all. Like that was the least of my worries at that age with everything going on. And so then we moved to Cape Coral from Fort Myers, and I enrolled at Pelican. And Mrs. Davis, from day one, like kept me in from recess and was working with me. And I remember after, she kept giving me books to take home. And I remember after 2 weeks, she called home. And usually when teachers called home, it was a bad thing. Like I was not a great child at the time. And my mom answered, and she was like, hello, Mrs. Davis, and giving me this look. And I'm like, oh man, I've been really good. Why is Mrs. Davis calling? And then it was just a lot of, okay, yes. And so when my mom got off, she's like, well, that was Mrs. Davis, your teacher. And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, she just wanted to say that you are an amazing student and that you're all caught up, and she has no idea why they thought you had to fail second grade. And so I just like was beaming, as you can imagine. And so from that day on, I just loved school. I loved to read. She also got me into writing. And so, but reading and writing was definitely always my jam, like just helped me to relax and escape to another world and, you know, get out your feelings when you felt like you couldn't say certain things.
Wow. Just goes to show that sometimes it just takes one teacher
Oh,
that
absolutely.
can make a big difference.
Yep. And that was consistent throughout the rest of my school time. You know, I went to Gulf Middle, I went to Cape Coral High School, and I always had a teacher who just really took the extra time and cared. And so I try to be that teacher now.
Awesome. Okay, final question. If you could have dinner with anyone living or dead, who would it be and why?
This was so easy. LinManuel Miranda.
Ah, Hamilton.
Yes, Hamilton. He is a creative genius, and I feel like he's a prophet for our time. I mean, he was really, Hamilton was this watershed moment in this cultural revolution in our country that sparked so many different things. And he's done a lot of other things too in the Heights that show.
Hamilton the person was or the musical was
the
a watershed?
musical,
Oh, okay,
yeah, the musical.
What about it that I haven't seen it?
Okay,
So,
you missed out.
I know. I will. I plan to eventually. I heard
They're touring.
They're gonna release a movie version.
Yes,
which
they
I'd
are
rather see it live
in
but-
October.
okay,
Yes.
yeah.
So now everyone who said, I saw Hamilton with the original cast, we can all brag and say we technically did too.
Yeah.
I didn't see it with the original cast, but I think just to imagine the whole story of our founding fathers with people of color, and then, so he based it on this biography of Hamilton by Ron Chernow, which I've read, and it's like massive. I want to say it's like 800 pages, you know, like Harry Potter book. And for someone to have read that and thought, I'm going to make this a musical, reimagine with people of color as their founding fathers, and have this be hip hop and rap. Like, my mind is blown. Like, I don't know how he came up with it. His other play In the Heights is also really well, and that's going to come out as a movie version soon. Not a play, it's like they actually made it into a movie, and it has to do with a lot of pertinent issues right now with our dreamers and everything else. And so, I don't know, he's done so much. He
created and wrote the musical?
He wrote it and, created and did the music and starred in it. And he's just, I mean, now you see so many lines from that play Hamilton on signs where people are protesting, you know, and like it's just caused this whole revolution. It's amazing. And what it's done for the arts, you know, getting people to go see plays again. And I think it's just, as a creative person, like, I'm just in awe of it because he's around my same age, and I'm like, what am I even doing with my life? This is amazing.
You've written 3 books.
Yeah, but I'm no Lin-Manuel Miranda, so I would love to sit down and have dinner with him and just pick his brain.
Yeah, he seems like such a nice guy.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And I know he does a lot of charity work and stuff
Does a
too.
ton of charity work, and I follow him on Twitter, and he's hilarious, and yeah, really sweet.
Okay, all right. Jamie Ayres, English teacher and published author, Cape Coral High School. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you so much for having me. It was fun.
You're welcome. All right, and thank you for watching and listening. We'll see you next time.